Hello, I'm Luke Chandler, professor at Florida College. We're here today with Professor Yosef Garfinkel from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Yosi is the chair of the archaeology department there and has spent decades excavating in the lands of the Bible in Israel. Most of the past 20 years have been spent excavating the early Iron Age, which is the time of the earliest kings of Judah. And so we're going to discuss some of his work today in his special visit here to Florida College. Yosi, it's very nice to have you with us today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
I guess I'll begin with a question just about you, if that's okay. You're from Israel. You lived in the city of Haifa, and you've been in Jerusalem for a long time, teaching archaeology, practicing archaeology. What was it that brought you into archaeology?
When I was in high school, I already developed deep interest in archaeology. I participated in excavation in Shikmona, a small site near Haifa, and then I excavated for 2 weeks in Tiberias, near the Sea of Galilee. And then after military service, which is compulsory in Israel, I came to Hebrew University and I studied archaeology and geography for BA, and then archaeology for MA and PhD. And here I am, an archaeologist.
And now you're the head of the department.
No, now I retired.
So you're retired?
I was head of the department. I managed to raise $7 million donations, and we renovated the old building, and we renovated our study collection, and we have a research center, the Roger and Susan Hertog Center for the Archaeology of Jerusalem and Judah. So I did a lot of things for the institute and for the university, and now I'm retired, so I have time for myself.
Okay. When you say retired, you're also still leading excavations. So is that retired from the classroom, or what does that mean?
Retirement is not like here when you had to close your office and that's it. I keep my office, I keep my laboratory, and I still guide MA and PhD students. I'm organizing excavations on behalf of the Hebrew University, so nothing has been changed in my life.
Okay, wow. That's, yeah, I think if I ever retire, which I'm not sure I ever will, but I will not get to keep my office probably. But we'll see what happens with that. That's hopefully a long time in the future. It was great to talk about some of the work you've done because you were a prehistoric archaeologist for part of your career, leading excavations at Neolithic sites. And then I remember you saying that you wanted to change direction and do a biblical site. So how did you select your first Iron Age site?
What happened is that I was teaching in the biblical department. In our institute, we have 3 departments. We have prehistoric department, biblical department, which is Bronze and Iron Ages, and then we have classical department, which is Hellenistic, Roman, and Byzantine. And I was teaching in the biblical department, but I excavated late Neolithic. So it was not very balanced in a way, but I have deep interest, and I made important contributions to this period that people didn't give much interest to it before. But then all my professors retired. The leading figures in biblical archaeology like Trude Dotan, Amichai Mazar, Ephraim Stern, Amnon Bento. So it was my duty to start having excavations in the Bronze or Iron Ages. So I was ready to move from prehistory to biblical archaeology. And then came my student, Sa'ar Ganor. And he said, look, there is a wonderful site called Khirbet Qeiyafa. People don't give it much attention. And he invited me to come and see the site. And as I was standing on the site, I saw the city wall, which was still standing after 3,000 years. And it was possible to recognize gate without excavations. And I was standing on the edge of the site, overlooking the valley of Elah. And we are on the border between Judah and Philistia. And we are on a main road. The valley of Elah is also a main road leading from the coastal plain into Hebron and Jerusalem. So I knew it must be a very important site. And I decided to start excavating them. In 2007, we have a small season. We saw that, okay, we have some Hellenistic, Persian level on top, and then the city is from the Iron Age, built on bedrock. But nobody imagined it will be, what is the dating? 10, 9, 8 centuries BC.
And I remember you said it was a big shock just now that when you excavated and that Iron Age level, and Iron Age, for those who aren't in the field, just a simple definition, Iron Age is the kings of Judah and Israel, the biblical kings. And so you had that Iron Age level, and like other sites, you assumed it would be from some of the later kings in the text. And the dating, what was the dating again that was so surprising?
Well, when we excavated in Israel, or in archaeology of the kingdom of Judah, Lachish is the main site that gives you the sequence. You have Lachish level 5, and then 4, 3, and 2. 2 is the last city destroyed by the Babylonian, by Nebuchadnezzar. Level 3 is from 701 BC, destroyed by Sennacherib. And then level 4 and 5 are earlier. But how early are they? This was not clear till we came and excavated them. Anyhow, when we excavated in Khirbet Qeiyafa for the first season, the pottery looked like earlier than Lachish 3. So it was before Sennacherib campaign. But it can be not 701, it can be 750, it can be 800, it can be 850 BC. Nobody was thinking about early 10th century BC. And the big shock was when the radiocarbon measurement came, and it turned out that this is a city 1000 BC, a city from the time of David.
And that was the first, it was on the bedrock, so it was built around the time of David, and that was a new thing in archaeology, wasn't it?
Before us, there was no clear level from the time of David anywhere in Israel. Even in Jerusalem, the capital of the kingdom of Judah, we don't have clear remains from the 10th century BC. Jerusalem is a complicated city. You have modern village and an old city built on top of the remains, so you cannot excavate anywhere you want. And where you're excavating, you have a lot of damage done by later period. Herod the Great, whenever he built, he cleared everything to bedrock. So large part of the sequence of ancient Jerusalem has been erased over time. And people said, look, Jerusalem, the capital, there's no evidence of David and Solomon. So they are mythological figures. And what's happened in Khirbet Qeiyafa is that for the first time in the archaeology of Israel, we have a level from the time of David. And the amazing things in Khirbet Qeiyafa is that it was built and destroyed after 20, 30 years. So we have a biblical Pompeii from the time of David.
It preserves everything, and most of the site, a lot of that site, nothing was built on top of it. So it was, you go below topsoil, and you're in the time of David. And the location of Khirbet Qeiyafa for Bible students carries an exciting aspect of the location. The Elah Valley below, what's that associated with in the Bible?
Our site is located exactly between Socho and Azekah. Socho is about 1 mile to the east, and Azekah is about 1 mile to the west. And according to the biblical tradition, the famous battle between David and Goliath took place in the valley of Elah, between Socho and Azekah. And the exact place is called Ephes Damim. Ephes today in modern Hebrew is usually 0. And Damim is blood. But it's not 0 blood, it's opposite, because Ephes in biblical Hebrew is border, edge, border. And we are here in a bloody border. This is the biblical definition of this part of the valley of Elah, a bloody border. And you can see, why is it built Khirbet Qeiyafa, heavy fortified city in the place, to keep the border? Why it has been destroyed? Probably the Philistines managed to destroy it sooner or later. Why David and Goliath fighting in exactly the same location? And we have other traditions, only 1 or 2 sentences about fighting between David heroes and the Philistines, and this also took place in the valley of Elah. This was the area of clashes between the city of Gath, one of the 5 Philistine cities, that in the 10th and 9th centuries BC was a major political and urban center, and the kingdom of Judah in the hill country. And in the lower Shfela, this is where, in the lower part, in the Shfela, this is where they have fighting with each other.
So we have a lot of historical events, biblical narrative, geography and archaeology converging at the same spot, which made it a site of high interest. The New York Times, you found an inscription there, and the New York Times ran an article on it, and that became very famous. That's actually how I learned about the site, was the New York Times article. And I wrote something on a blog, and then someone else with the excavation invited me to join the excavation. I said, well, I'll try it one time. My wife gave me permission, and I went, and my father said, can I come too? I went, well, come on, Dad. And so we went, and as you know, we both got it in our blood, and we kept coming back.
And your father did very well
He
in the
did.
excavations, yeah.
He did. And we have it at Khirbet Qeiyafa, this fortified site built at the time. The Bible says there's a government in Judah, David's government. It's on the border with a lot of blood, shed, battles, clashes, and some of those are recorded in the Bible. And it's between Socho and Azekah. The 1 Samuel 17 gives us that geographical information. And so right there we have this very massively fortified small city, but a border guard saying to the Philistines, keep out. Now some critics who were questioning what you found, and you were connecting it with the kingdom of David, some critics said, well, this has to be a Philistine city, because we know Judah didn't build cities like that yet. They were tribal and rural, and the Philistines probably built it against Judah. But you responded to that.
Okay, this is a part of a much bigger debate, and this is how much history is embedded in the Hebrew Bible, and specifically about the 10th century BC. And many scholars over the years, it started at around 1980s in Copenhagen, the minimalist school, and they claim that the biblical tradition has been written only in the Hellenistic era. This is 700 years after the time of David. So all the tradition about David and Solomon, Rehoboam, and so on are complete mythological stories, and nothing is reality behind these traditions. Now, when we came, and we have a fortified city in Judah from the time of David, minimalist people then said, okay, we were mistaken. They tried to do bypass the new data from Khirbet Qeiyafa. And then the first scholar suggested this was a Philistine city. 4 years later, the same scholar said this is Canaanite city. But in the new article, he didn't say that 4 years earlier, he claimed it was Philistine. So they are rewriting their own history and blaming the biblical author to rewrite history. You see, This is ridiculous. And there was another suggestion that the site belonged to King Saul, and it's Israelite, because Israelite is okay, but not Judean. Anyhow, the method is comparative analysis. We're taking various aspects of the city, and we compare it to cities in Judah, to Canaanite cities, cities in the northern part, in the kingdom of Israel, or Philistine cities. The Philistine, we have excavation in Ashdod and Ashkelon, Ekron, and Gat. Only in Gaza, no excavations were made so far. Anyhow, when you do comparative analysis of the urban planning, it's typical Judean. The animal bones, we have no pig bones. And Philistine site, Canaanite site, you have pig bones. We have evidence of administration marking the handles of jars. We have 693 handles which were marked with a finger impression.
Someone's collecting jars. That's a lot of jars.
And what happens that later in Judah, this tradition continued into the 8th century and 7th, and even the Persian period up to the Hellenistic era, they used to mark the handles of jars. And this is not found in any Canaanite, Philistine, or Kingdom of Israel. So every aspect that you do comparative analysis, you look at the material culture at Khirbet Qeiyafa, compare it to the various units or different ethnic groups, you can see that it always fit the kingdom of Judah.
Okay. That's a lot of new data, and of course a lot of people did different things with it, but I guess people have come to where the data points at this point in time. Well, after a number of seasons at Khirbet Qeiyafa, you moved to a site that had been excavated several times previously, Tel Lachish. Over here in the States, we often call it Lachish. Florida College, Phil Roberts, one of our professors, excavated in one of the previous expeditions there at Lachish. But you wanted to open up a new excavation at Lachish, and you mentioned like the different levels and attested biblical levels, but 4 and 5 were Iron Age, the kings of Judah, but there was a lot that was not known about them. So what were your goals, your purposes for going to Tel Lachish?
Okay. We excavated Khirbet Qeiyafa. Usually it will took 2 years to excavate a building. And we excavated altogether about 10 buildings. And then there was, after 7 years, it was a question, shall we continue and excavating another few seasons, or maybe and then you might have more of the same, or shall we go to another research question? And I felt that we have a lot of data from Khirbet Qeiyafa. It's time to stop the fieldwork and start doing the analysis. People had to understand that the excavation in the field is like the top of the iceberg. 10% is the field work, but then 90% is the analysis of the pottery, the enamel bones, the metal object, the inscription, the Egyptian scarabs, and so on and so forth. So we stopped the excavation in order to concentrate on the analysis.
The analysis can take many years.
Anyhow, I said, okay, we have something from the time of, we have a city from the time of David. In this city, we discovered a miniature building, a box in the shape of a miniature building, and it fit the description of Solomon Palace and Solomon Temple. The text describing Solomon Palace is extremely unclear because there are technical terms like הצלעות אשר על העמודים 45 15 טור ושקופים 3 טורים ומחזה אל מחזה 3 פעמים. I know that you didn't understand the word, but if you take Israelis,
one or two words.
Sorry, if you take Israelis today, they will also not understand most of it. And if you take 10 different biblical translations, you will find 10 different ways to translate these sentences.
So the Hebrew words, the meaning has been lost over time.
Yeah,
The
they are
technical
technical, architectural technical terms that lost their meaning. And in the Anchor Bible, the most prestigious commentary of the biblical text, it's written about this paragraph of Solomon Palace, that this is the most corrupted text in the Hebrew Bible. A wonderful compliment.
Wow.
Because we have the model, and it was possible to see that in the model we have beams of the roof organized 3 together. And it was possible to see that around the entrance we have 3 recessed frames. The lintels are organized in a recessed way around the opening. And this is what is described in the Bible in Solomon Palace and Solomon Temple. And we were able to decipher the biblical text thanks to the miniature building model that was found in Judah in the 10th century BC. And the Bible described a royal building in Jerusalem in the 10th century BC. So this was amazing. But the point is that we have something from David and something about Solomon. So who is next?
Rehoboam.
Yes, and there is tradition that he fortified 15 cities in Judah. And we went to Lachish to see if we can find a fortification in Lachish from the time of Rehoboam.
The book of Chronicles it includes Lachish in a list of cities that Rehoboam
15.
fortified.
There are a list of 15 cities. And minimalist people said, this is not from the time of Rehoboam, this is from the time of Hezekiah, or this is from the time of Josiah, or this is from even John Hyrcanus, making it Hashmonean list. People move it as they like, up and down, and whatever. We came to Lachish in the northeast corner, and we found a new city, a city wall which was not known before. Today we have nearly 30 radiocarbon dating. And it's the dating of this city, level 5 at Lachish, the first Iron Age city. You have the Canaanite cities, level 8 and level 7 and 6. Then you have a gap, and the site was re-inhabited after about 200 years. This is level 5. And now we know that level 5 existed from about 930 to 660. And then from 860 to 800, we have radiocarbon dating from level 4.
Okay.
So this is level 5, was built in the later part of the 10th century BC. So it's not like Qeiyafa 1000 BC. It's 930, 70 years later.
So at Qeiyafa, you have the construction from the time of David, and then you mentioned the temple model, which has architectural features relating to the Temple of Solomon in the Bible.
Yes.
In the book of Kings. And then at Lachish, in the Bible story, in the Bible text, Lachish is mentioned earlier, like in the time of Joshua. And then it basically disappears until the time of Rehoboam. And it's included in the list of cities that Rehoboam built. And you say that level 5 appears after a gap, and that the dating of level 5 is Rehoboam, basically.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
This
And
is
then,
amazing, yeah.
Yes.
But by the way, what happened in this gap period? For about 200 years, the big mound of Lachish was not occupied. So the whole area has been deserted? No. 3 miles, 4 miles west of Lachish, there is another site called Khirbet Qeiyafa. And we excavated the site of Khirbet Qeiyafa because on the topsoil we found pottery like in Khirbet Qeiyafa. So we assumed that we're going to have another site from the time of David. And indeed, we excavated Khirbet Qeiyafa and we found a site from the time of David. But it was not a fortified city, it's a small village. And it turned out that most of the site of Khirbet Qeiyafa was a town from the time of the judges. So when Lachish was destroyed, Arai flourished.
Okay.
And then Lachish was important again, and Arai was not inhabited. So you see two sites. When this one is big, this is, the equilibrium between the two sites.
Yeah, like when Lachish was destroyed, the nature abhors a vacuum, and so the everything flowed to Arai. I was with you 1 year there, and my son Caleb was also there. I remember you were trying to find the city wall, and you never found one, obviously. And so that's, but so it was an unfortified town there.
When we came to Khirbet Qeiyafa, we have great expectation to find a second Khirbet Qeiyafa because they're on the same very similar location. Khirbet Qeiyafa overlooks the valley of Elah, which is a main road leading from Ashdod and the coastal plain into the hill country. And Khirbet Qeiyafa is overlooking the valley of Lachish. And you have the main road from Ashkelon to Hebron. So it's on the border. So both sides are on the border. Both sides is where we have a main road crossing. So the same geopolitical location exactly.
Okay.
But then, but you don't win the lottery twice. So instead of finding another fortified city, we discovered a small village from the time of David. So now we can write a book, A City and Village from the time of David.
So the village, you say the pottery is the same as Khirbet Qeiyafa. Do you think it served some sort of, it was not fortified, so, because it was also, during the time of David and before the time of David, I guess it would not have been a military center since there was no fortification there. Just a village that benefited economically from Lachish not being there, basically.
What happens is in Khirbet Qeiyafa we have a town. The houses from the time of David occupied maybe 500 square meters. That's half a hectare. But the whole site is about 1.7 hectare, and all of it was occupied in the time of the judges. Okay. And it has some affiliation with the Philistines. And Gat of the Philistines is half-day walk from Khirbet Qeiyafa. So it was important site in the time of the judges, and then it was evacuated, and then we have a level from the time of David.
So we see in that site, even though there are no fortifications, the political transitions. You say it's a site that had affiliations with the Philistines, but in the time of David, the power is shifted to Judah, and we see that town, I guess, change its character to match Judah. The political winds have turned, and they're now the more dominant power, and we see it reflected in Khirbet Qeiyafa. Okay.
We didn't talk about what is called the historical geography. It's a major question. What was the biblical name of Khirbet Qeiyafa? And what was the biblical name of Khirbet Qeiyafa? Because these names are not biblical names. They are Arabic names which were given to this site maybe 500 years ago, maybe 1,000 years ago. We don't know how early these names were in use, but they are later Arabic names. We were thinking that Khirbet Qeiyafa is biblical Sha'araim, because a city called Sha'araim is mentioned 3 times in the biblical text. 2 of the 3, it's associated with David, and it was never associated with any other king. And 2 of the 3 times, it's in the valley of Elah. Now, what is the meaning of the word Sha'araim? It means 2 gates, because in Hebrew you have 1 gate, 2 She'araim, many She'arim. So it's Sha'araim, 2 gates. And the Khirbet Qeiyafa is from the time of David. It's located near the valley of Elah, and the site has 2 gates. Now, usually biblical cities has only 1 gate. This is exceptional. Even Lachish, 3 times bigger, Gezer, 5 times bigger. They have only 1 gate. And the small city of Qeiyafa has 2 gates. Maybe it was a mistake, so they never repeated it again.
Because the gate is the weak point in your defenses. You have stone walls, but a wooden door.
Exactly.
So why do you think?
So we think that Khirbet Qeiyafa is biblical Sha'araim. And I think it's probably 95% possible. Maybe not 100%, but 95%. I think it's very reasonable.
Why do you think they would have? Why do you think they would have two gates? Just it shows their lack of experience in constructing fortified cities.
I don't know.
Okay.
And then there's also a question: what was the biblical name of Khirbet El Rayu? And we suggested that this is biblical Tziklag. I think there were 11 or 12 earlier suggestions, suggesting Tziklag was in Tel Sheva or Tel El Chesi and Tel Rani, and you have a lot of different suggestions about the location of biblical
Ziklag in the Bible was the city the Philistines gave to David and his men. Yes.
It's mentioned 13 times in the biblical tradition, 12 times associated with David. And then it's mentioned again in the list of the return of Zion.
Okay.
And it's not associated with any other king. So now the question is, where is biblical Tziklag? So we have three criteria. One is the name, the location, and the chronology. What is the name Tziklag? It's not Semitic. It's the only place that we have a Philistine name. When the Philistines came to Ashdod, it remained Ashdod. They came to Ashkelon, it remained Ashkelon. Ashdod, Gat, all these sites, they didn't change names. So how come one site suddenly have a Philistine name? It means that there was no Canaanite cities there before. So this is one of the criteria, that Tziklag should not be a major Canaanite city from the late ones. Another tradition is that David came to Achish, king of Gat, and he gave him Tziklag. So Tziklag has to be associated with Gat, not too far away from Gat. It cannot be near Ashdod or near Gaza. It has to be associated with the city of Gat. And then it said that when David left Tziklag and went to Hebron to become a king, to be crowned as a king, Tziklag became an inherited land of the kings of Judah.
Okay.
So it had to be close to Judah. It cannot be in the coastal plain or too far away in the Negev. When you take all the suggestions raised so far, we are the only one who meet these three criteria. All the other sites are either too far away, or they don't have a level from the time of David, or they were important Canaanite towns before, or cities, and so that it's not fitting to get suddenly a Philistine name. Okay. And in this case, I think it's about 80% possible that it's Tziklag. It's not 100%, it's not 95% like Sha'araim, but I think it's, from all the suggestions raised so far, it's the best one.
Okay. I know there has been a lot of debate when you proposed that as Ziklag, a lot of debate over that versus some of the other sides. Yes. Okay, but that's the way archaeology works. You check each other out and compare.
The problem is that all the people who are criticizing us on this aspect or another, they're already minimalists who said in the past that the Bible is not historically accurate and so on and so forth. They're trying to define the old idea. Because I was a scholar dealing with the Neolithic period and Chalcolithic, late prehistory, I never wrote anything about David or this debate about Bible and archaeology. Never. Never published even one word. I knew about all this debate. I was teaching them in class, but I didn't research them personally. So when I came to Khirbet Qeiyafa, I was like empty page.
Yes.
I couldn't care less if it will be David or Hezekiah or whatever. I didn't come to look for David necessarily. I want to have a biblical city in Judah. Let's say that Qeiyafa was not built by David, but was built by another king, and then Sennacherib destroyed it in 701 BC. We will have a wonderful Pompeii from the time of Hezekiah. Yes. And then we'll have inscription and administration and pottery and whatever from the time of Hezekiah. And it will be very nice. I'm sure that it would be a very nice site, it will not be disappointing.
Yes.
But the amazing thing is that we have a biblical Pompeii from the time of David. And this was really the amazing things about Khirbet Qeiyafa. And once we have the radiocarbon dating, after the second season, we already found a gate, an inscription. Radiocarbon dating was 1000 BC. And then we have full page on the New York Times. And thanks God you read the New York Times, so you came to excavate at Khirbet Qeiyafa.
I'm very
And
thankful and blessed. I have read that too.
And then the BBC make a program about it, and National Geographic, and all the media in the world were kept on writing about Khirbet Qeiyafa year after year after year. And people asking me, who doing such a great PR for you? I said, King David. It was amazing because we really changed the picture. It was the first time in the archaeology of Israel that people can see how pottery from the time of David looked like. What was the material culture at the time of David? And now it was possible to use the same pottery to check other sites. And I wrote an article published 2 years ago that Bet Shemesh level 4 is a fortified city from the time of David. And Tel Lachish is another fortified city from the time of David. And there is a site called Khirbet Dawara. Not many people know about it. It's northeast of Jerusalem, overlooking the Judean desert and Transjordan. And it has the same pottery and the shape of the site with Kazmat city wall, like Khirbet Qeiyafa. So today we have a number of sites. It's not just one city. You can see that these fortified cities mark the border of the kingdom of the fortified area in the kingdom of David. And further away, it was basically unfortified villages. Like Arad of Beersheba, they were occupied in the time of David, but you don't have fortification yet. They were small villages. Only 150 years later, in the second part of the 9th century BC, Arad and Beersheba were fortified. So it took the kingdom of Judah 150 years to spread from the core area in the hill country to the Shfela, to the lowland. This is Rehoboam, that fortified cities. And then in another 2-3 generations to go further to the south and to fortify the rest of the territory.
And that's interesting because people have often looked for David. They associate David with the city of David, in Jerusalem. But as you mentioned, it's not a good area to excavate. It's hard to find things or associate things. But there's been a lot of success with you and then others who followed you after you published Khirbet Qeiyafa for the first time and announced things, looking for David at the borders. Instead of trying to look only in Jerusalem, look at the borders, because countries, who are extending their power mark their borders. And that's what you've done essentially with Qeiyafa and Lachish and looking at Khirbet Arai. And then the borders, the effective borders, the fortified borders extend further later, as you say. We see the growth of the kingdom of Judah.
This is, by the way, one of the common things between the maximalist and minimalist. The maximalist said suddenly in the time of David there was a big kingdom. And the minimalist said suddenly in the time of Hezekiah there was a big kingdom. I don't believe in this suddenly. I think that United States today is not like America in the time of George Washington. Sure. And Israel today is not like Israel in 1948. So you cannot take the kingdom of Judah and think it was different. David started in the beginning, 7 years in Hebron. So he was a city-state, like the Canaanite city-state in the late Bronze. This was the beginnings, just Hebron. Then he went to Jerusalem and built Khirbet Qeiyafa, Bet Shemesh, and the kingdom became bigger. And then Rehoboam continued and make it further to the Shfela, and other kings continue further to the south. So it was a gradual process, and it's not suddenly. People need to understand that the settlement pattern, you need people, you need population, you need resources. It cannot be suddenly. Generation after generation, more population, more resources, the kingdom became stronger, and it was possible to build more fortified cities and more fortified cities. This is the way I understand it.
And there's a good lesson in that, just generally speaking. And for those of us who are looking, especially with the Bible text, it's easy for in the Bible or in archaeology or in history to take biases or assumptions in our mind and impose them on what we read. And but like you say, you started your work in the Iron Age as a blank page, and so that probably helped with you didn't come in with your mind already decided on certain conclusions, and it can be easier for us to read things objectively when we don't just assume things that the text may not actually say. I don't believe the Bible text says suddenly there is a developed kingdom with all these fortified cities, but we some of us may think that if we're not being careful. And what exactly does the text say? And in this case, archaeology is a good reminder to look at what is actually there and what is not actually there, but maybe it comes from me. I want to ask a question about Khirbet Qeiyafa, the character of the city, because it's an earlier city and its character is different than, say, Tel Lachish later, a couple of generations later. How would you compare the character of Khirbet Qeiyafa from the time of David to like the character of Lachish in the time of his grandson Rehoboam? What differences do you see in the character of the city and how they reflect on the development of the kingdom?
Okay, Khirbet Qeiyafa and also the other side are fortified with a casemate city wall. What is a casemate? It's a city wall that you have outer wall, after 2 meters an inner wall, and there are space in between, rooms that could be used for dwelling or for storage or whatever was needed. And the story of Rahab in Jericho described a casemate city wall because it said, כי ביתה בחומה ובקיר החומה היא יושבת. Her house inside the city wall, and inside the city wall she is dwelling. It must be a casemate city wall. If it was a solid wall, she could not live inside it. So this is very clear that she was sitting. The Bible describes a casemate city wall. And all this site has casemate city wall. And also later site like Tel Bet Mirsim and Be'er Sheva, which were built later, even 150 years later or so, has casemate city walls. So this was a standard urban planning in Judah, to have casemate city walls. In Lachish, when we're excavating Lachish, we have a solid stone wall and not casemate. So from the beginning, Lachish was more important than the other cities in Judah. And it was already fortified with heavier technology. And so we know that Lachish was the second most important city in Judah. And Sennacherib described how he conquered Lachish. He was very proud about his war over Lachish. Yes. And in Nineveh, in his palace, in the throne room is decorated all over with scenes from the battle over Lachish. He saw it as the peak of his, successful military achievement, as the most important. And many scholars said he did it because he didn't conquer Jerusalem. As he was fighting over Lachish, he sent Rav Shakeh and Assyrian military troops to conquer Jerusalem. And they didn't manage to conquer Jerusalem. So many people said, it's a common idea that he decorated the palace with Lachish because he didn't conquer Jerusalem. But when you are looking at Lachish, and we also wrote an article about the siege ramp, how it was constructed, 3 million stones were needed. This is an operation for an empire. Yes. Not everybody can organize such an oily war machine. So I think that he was proud because of Lachish, not because of Jerusalem.
Yeah, the stone ramp for Lachish, the panels showing the siege of Lachish are in the British Museum in London, and one of the very popular exhibits there. Yeah. With Lachish, what was the city like in the time of Rehoboam? You say you've recently, identified the perimeter of the city wall, because in 2017, I believe, you found the first section of that solid city wall, got the dating, but then you and another archaeologist, Hugu Kang, had been working there recently, and you said Hugu has found a section of the wall on the other side of the site, so we know how big it was now.
So it's developed over time. We start excavating the northeast corner of Lachish. We were the fourth expedition. So 3 earlier expeditions excavated in Lachish and didn't find a city wall from to level 5. So the city wall from level 4, but not 5. So people assumed that level 5 was a village and not a fortified city. And then some people said level 5 was built in the time of David, and level 4 is from the time of Rehoboam, and he fortified level 4. And other people said, no, the level 4 was fortified only in the late 9th century BC or early 8th century BC, and the first 200 years, Lachish was not inhabited or not fortified. All kind of speculations. Minimalist people has very easy ways. They're sitting in their office, and they write an article. David didn't exist, a temple didn't exist, no fortification. It's very easy. All you need to do is to sit 1 month in your office, in air condition, drink coffee, and write article, this king and this king and this tradition, and very easy. And they flooded the literature with thousands of articles, which is really garbage. But if you want to prove something, you need to organize an expedition. And you need to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you need to go to the site and excavate it from 5 o'clock till 1 o'clock in sun and dust and sweat. You need resources, you need staff, you need volunteers, you need to analyze the material, you need radiocarbon dating. And you put it one opposite the other, it's ridiculous. They can do everything in 1 month, and we need years and years and years, you know, to prove that there was something in the time of David, to have a temple from the time of Solomon, or to have a city fortification in Lachish. And the funny thing is that they always said, you need a smoking gun. What smoking gun you have when you write that David never existed? What smoking gun you have when you said the list of Rehoboam is from the time of Josiah? Nothing. 100% speculation. And when we come with city wall and radiocarbon dating, they start saying, but this is not this and this is not this, trying to defend you know, this speculation without any base. But the important things about my work and most of my scientific strengths coming from the radiocarbon dating. I'm not saying Khirbet Qeiyafa is from the time of David because David fought in the Valley of Elah. What is the connection between David and Goliath and the city?
Yeah, none.
You cannot date it like this. Right. I'm not excavating Lachish and, oh, I found a new city wall. This city wall is from the time of Rehoboam. How do you know? First of all, I have radiocarbon dating. The radiocarbon dating said 1000 BC, 930 BC. And once you have the chronology fixed, then you can see it fit the Bible or doesn't fit the Bible. And this is the right way to work. Not to date archaeology according to the Bible and then archaeology prove the Bible, but to have circular reasoning. The dating had to be different from the tradition. Then you can see matching or not matching.
There's such a thing, as you know, as a scholarly imagination, which sounds like what you were describing. You know, it takes no work to imagine theories and interpretations and write an article, and then anyone who disagrees with you has to prove it, and that's not really fair. That's not really science. It's not very objective. But you've gotten up at 4 a.m. Quite a bit and put countless hours of research in and excavating in the field and bringing people like me to come in and pay for the privilege of joining you in 4 a.m. wake-up calls and working in the field. And we still want to keep coming back. There's something about it. With Lachish, I'm curious. I was with the first expedition, your first expedition, the fourth one to Lachish for several years. You're back there again, but what have you learned about the character of the city? It was fortified in the time of Rehoboam. Have you found any public buildings or religious structures or answers about the water system? Or what kinds of things about the character from the time of Rehoboam have you seen so far?
Okay, so what we know about the city from our excavation, it was first, we found fortification only in the northern part, northeast part. And we enlarged the area, and altogether we excavated about 80 meters along the city wall. Nearly half of the northern slope was excavated by us, and we have the city wall well preserved in some part, and then it's deteriorating into the slope. In the same area, we found 4 large storage buildings, pillar buildings, like we know in Beersheba and other sites. But in Beersheba, we have 2 rows of pillars, and in Lachish, only 1 row of pillars in each of these 4 storage buildings. So this is public construction. And this building abutting the city wall, like other Judean cities. But the other cities, they abutting a chasmat city wall, and here they are abutting a solid wall. But the concept is the same. And then because the city wall was not found by other expedition who worked in other part of Lachish, I assume that the city of level 5 was smaller. And then it developed over time. We know this in other sites, like in Chatzor. In the time of Solomon, Chatzor level 10 was a smaller, and later the entire site was occupied. You have the same in Tel Natzbe, in Bet Shemesh, Tel Faranos, biblical a biblical tirza. So it's quite common inside in the Iron Age. The first city was smaller. After 200 years or so, they extended the fortified areas. So I thought maybe it's the same in Lachish, that it was smaller in the time of Rehoboam, and later it grew over time. But Hugo Kang, my student now, is a professor in Seoul in the university in South Korea. He didn't like my idea. He wanted Lachish to be bigger from the beginning. So we excavated the north. He went to the south, to the southern slope, and he surveyed the slope. He saw a very massive wall penetrating there to the surface. He started excavating. Turned out to be Middle Bronze, massive building,
yes.
much earlier, 800 years before us, 900 years before. But he didn't give up. He continued to survey the slope. And then he found another wall 50 meters away from the first one. He started excavating there, and bingo, this is a city wall from level 5. And in the last 3 years, we excavated. This summer, 2 weeks, last year, and the year before, were dedicated to excavate part of this city wall. And I want this summer, 2026, to finish this area by enlarging the city wall and to clean the top of it, and to have nice aerial photograph where you can see the city wall, in a very impressive photo.
Okay, well, that's excellent. I understand you, at Lachish, previous expeditions did a lot of work with a massive palace structure. And I know there was a Persian level and it's Iron Age. It's a very large building. I understand it's the biggest building from the Iron Age found in Judah to date. I understand you were excavating near the palace in the center of the site. Can you comment on anything you were seeking there or anything you discovered there so far? Have you found an earlier version of the palace or other buildings connected with it?
You have the podium of the palace, monumental, and you don't have much to do in this specific location. This summer, Dr. Itamar Weissbein has more interest in the Canaanite era, not the Iron Age like me, and he opened 4 squares, 100 square meter, adjacent to the palace, not very, but after 10 meters or 8 meters from the palace, he excavated the 4 squares. He has remained from late Bronze Lachish and also Middle Bronze Lachish. And he was a bit disappointed because he wanted to have more late Bronze, and sometimes he got immediately to the Middle Bronze, because the palace also has a large courtyard. And when they built the palace, they leveled the area, and they removed large part of the Canaanite late Bronze remains, so you can go immediately to Middle Bronze. If you like the Middle Bronze, it's excellent for you, because immediately you excavate Middle Bronze. You don't need to excavate Persian and Iron Age and late Bronze. Anyhow, this is the situation in this specific location. And then a wonderful discovery still from the late Bronze for the last Canaanite city, an inscription. And the inscriptions are very, very rare in the Canaanite era. Canaanite inscription in not Hebrew. It's alphabet. The alphabet, it's early alphabet before we have Hebrew or Phoenician script. So it's Canaanite script. The earliest examples are known from Sarabit el-Khadem in Sinai. It was a minefield where they were looking for turquoise. And,
turquoise mines.
Anyhow, we have another proto-Canaanite or Canaanite inscription. And Lachish was the most important Canaanite site for the preservation and use of the alphabet. No other site in all Canaan produced so many proto-Canaanite inscriptions. So we have another inscription, there is a name on it. But I cannot tell you the name, it has not been published yet.
Oh, well, I understand that. Unfortunately, I do. You've proven to have a talent finding inscriptions, and I don't know if there's something, some force of nature you give to the people with you, but you found several inscriptions at Khirbet Qeiyafa, the one that made the New York Times, which is from the time of David, and it was difficult to read. And has there been any progress on translating that or getting a better translation?
Well, about 20 different scientific articles were published about this inscription, the ostrakon. Ostrakon is an inscription written with ink on a pottery shirt. and there is 5 lines and about 70 letters, and it's not very clear. About 20 different scientific articles has been written on this specific inscription. The other inscription that we have from Khirbet Qeiyafa is very clear. It was incised on the pottery before firing. And here we have a name, Ishbaal, son of Beda. Beda is the father, the name was not known before. But Ishbaal is also the name of the son of Saul, who ruled after him, parallel to David. So you have the name in the biblical text in the time of David, and you have it in archaeology in the time of David, the name Ishbaal. And if it was all invented after 700 years, nobody will know about Ishbaal and so on. So this was an important discovery. But in Khirbet el-Rai, we have another amazing discovery. Khirbet el-Rai, from the time of the Judges, something like later part of the 12th century BC. We have radiocarbon dating. We have a pit, a silo, lined with stones. And when it came out of use, it became a garbage place. So people dumped garbage into it. And we have fragment of an inscription. And we have the name, Jerubbaal.
Yes, which is another name of Gideon in the Bible.
Exactly.
Yes.
So from the time of the Judges, we have in the Bible Jerubbaal, and archaeology Jerubbaal. And you go 150 years later or so, and you have in the Bible and archaeology the same name, Ishbaal. So Jerubbaal and Ishbaal. And they fit, the archaeology and the biblical tradition fit very well in this case.
Yes. Because names sometimes are like style, and they go in and out of fashion. Some of them do, and the fact that you found names that correspond to the same time, we find those same names in the Bible. Not necessarily the same individual, but that name was in use.
Exactly,
And, some people say the Bible is written 700 years later. That's pretty lucky to get the correct name in that time period with what we're finding. Well, Yosi, thank you so much for giving us your time today. I appreciate all of your work, and now that you're retired, you have this other time for excavation with fewer distractions, perhaps, and I hope to join you again someday, and maybe we can get a group from Florida College to join you again sometime in the future.
So it's my pleasure to be here, and you are always welcome to join us in the excavations in Israel, or maybe to meet here or in other meetings, scientific meetings in the United States.
Wonderful. Well, this has been an interview with Professor Yosef Garfinkel from the Hebrew University, one of the leading scholars in the world on the early Iron Age. And it's been a privilege to have him here at Florida College. And again, thank you for being here and for sharing your information with us and your perspectives on your work.